Welcome to Pro Modeler. I'm Philip Flory. This month's build we're going to be doing is the Sukhoi SU-27 flanker. This is the UB version, which is the two-seater versus the single-seater. It's the Academy kit. It's been around a little while now. And I've built a few, and yes, it has got a few problems and a few bits and pieces, but for an out-of-the-box build, it's a pretty good kit. Nice little difference is you get this nice plate which holds it flat, because the fuselage is a two-half with a top and a bottom. As you can see, like this, we have the two parts with the top and bottom. It's quite nice having it on here because it keeps it flat. Otherwise, if it had been there, sometimes you get a little bit of wing warp and various bits and pieces like that. So if we just have a look through, so we can just get rid of that bit there, okay. And then what we've got, obviously we've got our instructions. Decals, pretty limited. There is lots of aftermarket ones out there. And we can have a quick scan through what we're going to get in the box. So if we just get a knife, clear parts separately bagged, which is very nice. Usual thing, we've got a seam line running right the way down through the middle, which will have to be taken out. And obviously we've got the little equivalent to the pirate sight on the front here, so it's a one piece with a canopy. So we'll be doing a little bit of canopy polishing just to get rid of those. Other little nice touch with the kit. We can get to it quickly. Get that out of the way. Photo etch parts, basically we've got some mirrors, a little bit of grilling here, which is going to go on with the air intakes, and a few other little bits of metalling. Nothing over the top and nothing really special, but it's a nice little touch like that. So the kit has been around a while, for a few years now, but the usual thing with the sort of the Academy kits, pretty nice riveting detail. Obviously with Russian jets, they tend to have a lot of riveting on them. It's got that, it's nice, it's recessed panel lines and very nicely done. Now, if you wanted to go down the resin route of things, there's plenty out there, Aries, Omega, things like that, cockpits for them, which I've done in the past. And there's going to be, Hans is going to be building the one on the site, and he's going to be doing with all the extra bits and pieces and all the goodies as well. So if you are a member, pop along to the forum, or if you're getting this on the disc, it'll be on the disc as well. Other little touch we're going to get is rubber tyres, so we don't have to worry about painting wheels. Nice little rubber tyre set. We have got something. The thing is, they're very shiny. They're going to be dulling down, so they could be sprayed whichever way we go. Okay, the famous nose cone. Yes, it is wrong. If you're a flanker fan or a fanatic, okay, you're probably going to notice it's wrong. If anybody else is looking at it, it'll look like a flanker and it looks right. It's not that far off, but it's far enough to warrant, if you wanted to, you could buy a replacement for it. There's a few companies out there doing it. I won't name drop them. Okay, same thing with the engines, with the exhausts. It's quite a big thing on the flanker. There's lots of detail around it, and obviously when you buy the kit ones like this, they're very limited, but hopefully I'm going to show you a way where I'm going to spray them up and do them in nice little metal finishes, and it will look just as good without having to go through it. Obviously, you know, a lot of weapons fit with this. The flanker really is a missile truck. It carries a lot with it, which we're going to arm it up, I presume, to the teeth with everything else. There again, so we're going to get all the missiles that would go with it. So really you're talking, it's very limited on the sprue count. You've basically got one sprue of weapons, and then we've basically got another one here with the actual a sprue there, if you like, and then another sprue which is really engines and surfaces and things like that. So it's pretty much comprehensive. We can drop the flaps and the slats on this one as well, so we're in the powered down position and run through it like that. With all good kits, we're going to start with the cockpit. Obviously we've got one tub out, sanded, taking care of everything, two instrument panels, two control sticks, two seats. And obviously we've got the fuselage section here as well, because we'll be spraying it blue in the inside. Now, here's a photo that we've got of the flanker cockpit, and as you can see there, this blue colour. Flanker blue, funnily enough, it's a flanker and it's blue, but it's actually called flanker blue, sort of in the trade. So what you need to do is find a match for it. Now the trouble being, if you're an acrylics painter such as myself, there's nothing around that is anything to do with flankers whatsoever. None of the manufacturers have jumped on board yet and said, I know, we're going to do sort of Russian or certainly Warsaw Pact colours. So we sort of have to make do. Now if you're using an enamel, you could go through the White Ensign paints, they do them, Hannantone range, the extra colour paints, they do them, if you can get hold of them. They're quite hard to get hold of. I don't like just switching over to enamels just for the sake of one plane. I'm an acrylics user, it dries quick, it's less smelly, easier to work with, well, easier for me. So what I use is Tamiya. Now what we've got here, obviously I build a lot of models, as you probably gathered by now. So what I tend to do is when I get to this situation where I don't have the paints, I mix them up. I started off with a little bit of XF18, which is the medium blue, which isn't that far off of it. It just needs lightening just a tad. So here I call it flanker bottom, which is also the same thing. And as you can see, all this is XF18 and then 1 part white to 2 parts of the blue, and you end up with that. Now that's not an absolute concrete guaranteed of the colour that it is, but the usual thing, if you look at flankers, they get a hard life, they bleach very easily and all the rest of it, and sometimes you'll get 3 different photos and there'll be 3 different colours. Obviously it depends on lighting, if they've used a flash with the camera, various bits and pieces on photos, so you have to be careful. But this is what I'm going to use. So this is basically, as you say, 1 part white to 2 parts of the medium blue for the cockpit area. Now I've had this paint obviously floating around for quite some time, so I have to be a little bit careful with it because it may be a little bit thick. I've got my standard Evo with the 2mm, 0.2mm needle set in there. So what we'll do, we're just going to put dropper thinners in first. Okay, a little bit of paint. Now I have to watch this because it could be a little bit lumpy because I haven't used it well, so I'm going to use an old brush and give it a dab round in there, and that will give it a nice good mix up without me having to worry too much. So there we go, nice good mix. Obviously we want it not too thin but not too thick either. We just poke that in there, just move that out of the way. Okay, check our flow. It's going to be blue, is the same as we're doing it here anyway, but also it'll give something to bite down on. So you're not going to see this too much going on, because it is just a paler version. If you can see there with the 2 cockpits, it's literally a paler version to what's there already. So we'll do those, we'll do the instruments, panels themselves. Obviously there's black to pick out, but as I say, by doing this, it's working like a primer if you like. It'll help the next switch will be the black going on there, it'll give it something to stick to. Now I know the seats, obviously we're going to do these black, but for the moment I just want to prime them up, so to speak, so we can use it like that as well. And then obviously we've got to do the inside, which would be the side walls of the actual cockpit itself. So there we go, a bit of a spray down. And also doing that, we can see how the plastic is, and it's basically oil free, so we don't have to worry about that. And then at the same time, I'm just going to give it a little blow just over the top and then the sides, because those side areas are going to be blue as well. So there we go, just like that. Right, so we'll let those all dry off just for a moment. Now it might be worth, once they've dried off for a little bit, obviously because I'm using acrylics, these are basically dry already, you can actually just pop around them again, just to make sure you're all happy with how they are. And obviously the control columns and things like that. Little trick here, if you get your control column and you've got some spring-loaded triggers, like those Tamiya ones here, if you get hold of them and hold them on the grip, okay, just on the grip area of the control stick, so we've got it just like that, okay, and then what we can do, we can spray it, because obviously the control grip will be blue, and the entire the flanker cockpit is this blue colour, so the grip's going to be black, so we can do that after the other bits are dry. So there we go, that's those all done. Okay, so we'll let those dry for a moment. Okay, so what we do now, this is dry. Now, the thing is, when you look at the cockpits, a lot of Western aircraft, they tend to have black panelling with grey demarcation lines or white demarcation lines, which is something quite easy because we can pop along with the wash and do it that way. Russian stuff tends to be slightly different. They're all blue and the switches and everything are black and silver. So what we're doing here, just dry brushing, flat brush, very, very lightly, and then literally we're just brushing in the panels to do the demarcations in black, and then we can just, because we're using the black like that, as you can see, it sort of brings it to life. If we pull you in pretty tight, there we go, as you can see it compared to the other side. If I just do the other side, usual thing with dry brushing, as little as you can on your brush, and then just sort of flick across the top, not pushing too heavily downwards, and then you basically want to come in from all directions, so we have it like that. So there we go. Now we just do the same on the cockpits as well. The instrument panels, just bringing those to the life. Where are you? There we go. As you can see, we've got those. Now what we do, we pick out the individual dials, black themselves. But there we go, that's those bits sort of done, and then we can pop around and then sort of detail them up by putting perhaps coloured areas in, various things like that. Obviously when you look at the reference photo of everything in there, there is some black switching, as you can see here, but the rest of it is sort of little funny colour area, bars of colour that go over it. It's going to be one of those things, you're not going to be able to see it, to be honest, that very well inside the cockpit when it's installed. If I just pop it, dry fit it in here now, just to show you what we're up against. Yeah, there we go, that's it. It's pretty tight in there. You can't see that much in there. By the time we've got the seats in there as well, it's going to be very hard to pick out the detail because it does curve over quite a lot. And then obviously we're going to have the canopy up or down, so you're not going to see a great deal in there. But there we go, that's those bits sort of done. So what we'll do now, we're going to pop around with a cocktail stick, a nice clean one. And if you can pull in with me just a sec, then all we do is take some black acrylic paint on a cocktail stick, and then we can just check across to the references and pick out all the dials which are actually just jet black, and then hopefully we can just colour those in. And then if you've got enough on your cocktail stick, it should just flow around in that area. Then what we're going to do, we're going to pop back with some silver, just to tidy them all up, and so you can see those dials again on there. So that's how we're doing those. Well, you can actually see that. But there we go, we're doing it just like that, you see. So if I just do another one over here. There we go, so we go in there like that, and then obviously you can pick out screens and other areas which are black, perhaps with a fine brush, or just do it on the cocktail stick way of doing things as I'm doing here. So we're just going to run one down there, and then there's one that comes across, and it's quite easy with a cocktail stick to sort of colour in a particular area without going perhaps too far. So we just do this one here, this other square one. You want your acrylic paint to be quite fluid, you don't want it to be too sticky. But there we go, that's those there. I'll carry on with those. Okay, so we've got the cockpit basically all done. Sticks are in, the control columns are in, and so are the panels, as you can see there. And as you can see, I've gone around and just detailed it up really to give it a bit of colour and a little white markings. They seem to have little white markings down the actual instrument panels, which shows the centre position for the column, which is quite a handy touch. As you say, it's one of those things. The cockpit colour itself is very bland all over. They don't tend to have black panelling like the Western aircraft do. But there again, I think considering it's just a plain old piece of plastic there, it's not a resin fit, it's not a bad job of going around detailing it up. So that's that bit done just like that. Now when you're dry fitting it to the inside of the cockpit here, the actual inner part of the tub, I've put on the actual HUD covers, these ones at the back, and I've just painted them black, so they're done just like that. But back here you've got a little stick which in some ways is a little bit too high, and I don't think we need it, so we're going to cut it off. There we go, that takes care of that. What we do is just nick it off a little bit in there as well. It says being careful not to cut his fingers off. There we go, just so it lays flush. Then what we can do, we can line this up with the front one just down here. Obviously if you're replacing this with a resin, you won't need any of this. This is literally just for the kit parts, and we can put them in and see how they're going to go. Then hopefully then they should push right up tight to the actual top of the little HUD covers on the back here, because without it at the back here, down here, there's a nasty gap because it was literally just like that. Instead of being pushed up tight. So if you don't want, if you want a nice tight fit, you can just simply come along, cut that one out as well, just like that, and then you can fit them in yourself, which will give you a far nicer join, and just remember to line them all up and away you go. But there we go, that's the cockpit situation at the moment. That's all in there. Now we could glue that in and away we go. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to glue the cockpit area in. So we're just going to line it up with all the bits and pieces in there. And when we're all happy they're in, as it should be, we're just going to pop along with the liquid cement down this back edge, just to put that in. And then if you do the sides where the instrument panels touch, that will just hold those in. And if you're using your liquid cement, it might discolour your paint colour as it flows around in there, but it will come back. So don't worry too much about what's going on in there. Right, so as we've got those bits drying, there's a few other bits and pieces we can do. What I've done, I basically put the tails together. That's done. So that's the tail fins done, and the tail planes are done as well. They're all together. What you need to do also is just have a look around and make sure all the panel lines go all the way through. A couple of them they've gone along and stopped and then carried on. So obviously just run a blade around and do those again. Okay. Next thing is basically the air intakes. Now they're obviously going to be the tricky part to get these to blend in well. So when you're cutting them off with a sprue, leave a little bit of a gap, and that way you won't be left with too much of a stub or a hole left in there. So we're just lightly taking care of any raised parts on there. We're not cutting to the inside, we're just doing the outsides of them. Now the other thing also we've got, we just bring you in to show you what we've got here. To what you can see it on camera, we've got ejector pin mark, got one just here and one down there, and obviously it's a little bit of a mess inside. It's quite rough, and if you can see it better on this one, perhaps you can catch it there in the light, this one down here, and as I say, this one up here. So literally just get a bit of file, quite a smooth file, don't want too coarse, don't want to be digging in, and we're just going to give this a rub over because they're slightly raised. So all we do, we'll just get rid of just bring you out a bit. There we go. We'll just get rid of the ejector pin mark and the one to the inside, and we're just going to give it a bit of a smooth around in there because, as I say, it is quite rough. And although we have got a photo etch part that goes in here, we want it to look quite nice. Okay, so we've got these front parts going together now for the air intakes. Pretty simple, two halves go together, the one on the top. What I've actually done here is put a line of super glue. I've just got a little bit of rocket here. Down the line, a little bit of kicker right over the top just to speed things up. And then I've given it a bit of acrylic paint right over the top and let that dry. Then what we're doing now with our sanding sticks, we're just coming along, use a bit more of a coarse one. Okay, and we're just literally ripping through all of that super glue. And then as soon as we all just go to white, you know, as in the moment you can see there's a line down the middle there. I might bring it in a bit closer. There we go, you can see the green, that means obviously there's a step still. So we want that all to turn blue, because obviously the CA is white. The kicker makes the actual super glue go white, but once you cut through the lot, it will go clear, and then obviously that means we're almost to the point of keeping it all flat, because we're trying to literally cut through it all. There we go, so we're something to like that. I'll just bring out a little bit, and obviously if we give this a buff with a tiny sponge, you can see there, it's basically all gone. There's no seam line running out. I've got a tiny bit there, and then we can do the same just with the front part. Just give this a bit of a sound over. There we go, just like that, so right the way through, and give it a, whoops, we can give it a good buff with a sanding sponge to bring this up. Then obviously we've got quite a lot of scratch in there because we've used quite a coarse sanding stick, so we're just going to have to keep buffing at that to make it go. Once you're basically gone, and you're happy, then we'll give it another bit. You know, I'm using this just any paint, any acrylic paint is a little bit of a filler. I've got the green here, so then all we do, we're popping back, and we're sanding this off as a final sort of look scene. As you can see, there's the peg mark, where you can see that, let's bring that in. As you can see there, that little white mark there, that's the little peg mark, all filled, it's all nice and smooth. So we just give this a bit of a buff up. Now the great thing we're using the acrylic paint to actually, as to check your filler, also acts like a little bit of like a Mr. Surfacer. It'll take care and fill up any little scratches you've got. As you can see them just down in here. They're all filled, it's all nice and smooth, but it's taking care of those just like that. So there we go, we can just finish off checking it all over. There we go. A little bit more down that front area there. And there we go. As you can see through, but it's all nice and smooth with a wet finger. You can see it stands out quite well, but that's all, I'm very, very happy with that. That's no problem at all with any of those parts. They're all nice and smooth. So it gives you a good idea of how to quickly take care of a seam line like that. So what I do now, we'll do the same here. We've just got our acrylic green. Back to that first one, all dust free, bit of acrylic paint, there we go. We're just going to paint up those areas. Obviously we're not trying to laden it too thick, and we will probably have to pop back and rescribe the odd little panel line, but there we go. As you can see there, even when it's wet, there is no actual line or seam line running down the middle. So we'll just give this one another quick run over as well, so they're at the same stage. It will just make things easier in a moment. So there we go, that's those two done. Now I'm hoping now the cockpit is all nice and dry, it should be. So if we just pop that to one side just for the moment, we can have a look at the cockpit. It's actually in there now. What also I've done is I've painted the seats black. Now the call out would say do it the grey colour, the cockpit the blue colour. It's not. If I've got a little picture here, this is one I did a long time ago, but this is a Resin Cockpit Set that I put in to the single seat flanker that I did a while ago. Pictures of this will be up on the forum, but as you can see, it is this sort of dirt grey. The one I did before was particularly heavily weathered, so this got a real bashing, but as the seat, as you can see, is all black and the harnesses are all picked out. So what we're going to do with these, we're going to make some little thin tape harnesses to go on there, and then paint them up in a nice sort of buff colour that these are, the same type of thing, and do it like that. Okay, so we've got some bits and pieces that I can show you been getting on with. Okay, we've got the fan in the open position. This way you get the sort of washboard effect versus there's a flat. You can pick the two, either open or closed. I've done it open, sort of in the power down position. And then what we're going to do now is rescribe all the panel lines that unfortunately we've lost as we've gone along. So there's two ways of doing this. You can literally run very carefully your P cutter around where you've still got some faint lines left, just like that. But obviously in certain cases where it runs right over the top, you are going to have to rescribe. So literally we just place it on, just like that. And without pushing, it's more of a pulling movement than a pushing. We can just pop those panel lines back in. So I've just got another one just down here. Across like that. So we can get those done, and then also what I'm doing, you get two little location pins on the top of the actual the intake itself. They get in the way, they sort of hinder your lining up when you actually put the intakes in place. So we're just going to whip them off. I'm just going to lightly sand the top just to blend all that in. We've got the fans put in here as well. We're going to paint all that up in a moment, but just for the moment we're going to test fit it. You've got the little scoop, obviously it's for the tyre, so we're going to pop this in just to see how it looks and what the actual joint is going to be like and all the rest of it. Now we know it's not going to be particularly pretty back here, but what we're going to do is literally use a little bit of super glue and filler, and then hopefully we can make a nice little join there. But that one's going to be an important one we need to take care of, and really is the nastiest one on the kit. So it's a bit like the Tomcat situation where we get those little lines in there. So if you've done that build, it's going to be the same type of thing. Right, the other thing we can do now is open up the holes. Depending on which ones you're going to be doing. Obviously, if you're going to be doing something like the Russian Knights, you won't need to open them up. Same way as you'll need to do them on the air intakes as well, because there's missile racks on the bottom there. And then we can fit the lower and the top half together, which is a nice straightforward type of fit. Now the only thing you're going to find is all over the top and half of the wings and the bottom half, little pegs sticking out. Now these are obviously for the injection moulding, where the mould lines actually come off, so they're going to have to be nicked out. But this is where the fun bit really starts, because in some ways this front area up here can be a nightmare sort of fit and scenario. So what you want to do is just take your time and really find out why it isn't closing. Sometimes they do. This particular one isn't a very nice one. It's going to take some fiddling, but you can fiddle around with it until you get a nice line in there, but don't worry about it too much. It's better to use plenty of filler and rescribe after it than really to fiddle about with it too much, because otherwise you might end up making bigger holes than you started with. Don't forget you've got to put the gun in as well, which I've already put in there, but we can get those two halves all glued up and ready to go, and this will give you a nice little rigid kit to work with before we put the intakes on, because if you try and put them on now, it tends to bend around a little bit, so we don't want that happening. Okay, so there's the two shell halves put together, if you like. Now loads of rubber bands, lots of pulling this together. There's lots of gaps that are going to need to be taken care of. It's an older kit. I say older kit, I think it's in about 90s, early 90s, mid 90s this one was built and designed. So obviously, it's the newer generation of kits, if you like, that started to come along in the 90s, but it's not up to today's sort of heavy tooling of sharpness. So we've got nice sort of gaps down in here, running along here and up here. So what we're going to do, we'll probably just use some normal green putty, bit of squadron stuff here, fill them, let them settle down and dry. But what we're going to do is leave this for a couple of hours with the bands on, just to all get grippy, and then we can actually get these intakes on as well and settled in position like so, and then we can go around and use lots of filler and fill in all these gaps and bits and pieces. It's one of those ones, it's nice because we don't have the wing join ones, and all of these are basically going to be hidden anyway. You're not going to be able to see them too well. And they're very straightforward because they're on curved surfaces, so with sponges and things like that we can take care of it. So okay, we're going to leave that now for a couple of hours to stand.